Reddit just exposed the entire Chinese government. Hello everyone, this is Mr. Obvious, bringing you the obvious. And today, on Reddit.com, here by a user named Classic. I get it. This has 60,000 upvotes. Protesters entered the building at 9 p.m. Police video released at 9:30 p.m. Video filmed at 5 p.m. And here you can see the proof. This is a police officer, and he forgot to hide his watch. Now, I'm going to explain the entire situation using the comment section, because there's an important comment that's stickied here. A Deadhead says, OP explains here, for those of you that need more context, this is about the Hong Kong protests, more specifically, the protest on July 1st. Today's violent protests were all planned by the police and Hong Kong government. The image proves it, as the video where police justified their actions against protesters was filmed before the protests became violent, which means that the government and police had planned the protests' violent nature by, most likely, sending officers dressed as protesters to make it so. This includes breaking into Leg Co., a Hong Kong central government building, spray painting the HK emblem, and hanging the British colonial flag. And then trashing parts of the government office. So, what really happened here? There was protests in Hong Kong, probably against their tyrannical dystopia that they live in. As you well know, China is ruled by a single party, the Communist Party. Unironically, they control the entire nation. They are heavy on censorship, they censor and oppress their citizens, they lie, they created a social credit system, which is an absolutely nightmarish, dystopian idea. Social credit is, if you're a good boy and you pay your taxes and you listen to the government, you get big boy points. And those points make you seem like a better person. If you do bad things, like have a little bit too much to think, aren't polite, and criticize the government, you get less big boy points. And as such, people will not like you, not give you business, and basically make your life horrible. The best part of this system is that if you're friends with someone with a low score, your score gets lowered. So they are absolutely using this to program and brainwash the entire people. You know, people are always asking me, Mr. Obvious, why do you have such interesting beliefs? Well, it's very simple. I see the threat that people seem to ignore. I see the Chinese government. I see a people and a culture that doesn't care about anything other than their own self-interests. They've fished their oceans dry. They've polluted and destroyed everything. They control their own citizens. They almost behave as a locust, consuming all the resources in one spot and then trying to invade other places to also consume resources. No remorse, no regret. And I've seen enough videos of the conditions in China to have a very, very negative opinion of the country as a whole. My point is, a country like the United States needs to become stronger, needs to annex Canada, needs to expand, needs to get more states, because China will eventually do the same thing. So it's a war between ideas of freedom and ideas of servitude. Who do you want to win the global stage? So Darty here says, very good observation. Classique says, thanks to UKTO25, I was made aware of it in the Hong Kong subreddit. Not sure who first spotted it, but now we know it should be common knowledge amongst the public. You know, I think the most shocking thing about this story is that Reddit actually did something right for once. Squid Lover says, also a total amateur move by the HK police. How did they not realize that watch would give them away? LOL. Mahdi Independent says, they're not used to free press. So we have a Hong Konger who disagrees with the assertions here, and for fairness, I'm going to read what he had to say. Hong Konger here. Unfortunately, this explanation is not quite accurate. Yes, the evidence suggests that the police willingly let the protesters break into the building so that the government could have a narrative. No, the evidence does not suggest that protesters were police officers dressed in plain clothes. You don't really know that, though. Protesters began allegedly. They retreated at around 8:30 p.m. and the protesters made their way in at 9 p.m., taking the bait so that the police could release the video at 9:30 p.m. They were a radical breakaway group separate from the main protest day. Now, if I were to guess, even if it wasn't the police themselves in disguises, they could have easily hired activists to do what they want. The left uses those tactics all the time in America. They'll hire a group of people or hire a person to come in and cause trouble. You guys ever remember like those photos of, very bad people wearing very bad symbols at Trump rallies? 9 times out of 10, it was a leftist who went undercover and was hired to do so because they were literally the only one there. It is always almost always fake. And this is just their tactics. This really exposes the kind of dystopia that China, and by extension our country, is becoming. Classic says, please spread this news and the original post so more people are aware that Hong Kong protesters, or the majority of them, did not wish for violence. The government is trying to villainize protesters in hopes of gaining trust and support from countries around the world. Sassy Dodo says, whenever 1/7 of your population actively protests, you can tell the government loses its legitimacy. At this point, you just have to keep protesting until your government changes. Russians had massive protests in 2012 when Putin broke the constitution, but our opposition leaders decided to give up and stop protesting. And after that, our freedoms decayed rapidly. You're way past the point of no return. Now you either lose your country in 5 to 10 years, all your freedoms, or you change people who are on top. Canadian Infidel says 2 million, not 1 million, so 2/7. 30% of an entire nation protesting is a historic first. Conquer69 says, a person that does this is called a provocateur. Some people think it's a made-up conspiracy nutjob concept, but it's a job that has existed for thousands of years. Now, this is shocking news. The cops recorded their video way before there was ever an attack. They wanted this to happen so that they could use it and spread a false narrative. And guess what the media did? Here on CBS, Hong Kong protesters seize government headquarters, clash with police. Do you have any idea how obvious it is now? I feel like Neo living in the Matrix. I feel like I've taken the red pill, and I can see that everything around me is nothing more than an illusion. It's not real. It doesn't exist. And that's exactly what I see when I look at this news. You see, the headline, Hong Kong police planned for violence at a rally, right? Or they're exposed. Look at this stuff. No. Hong Kong protesters seize the government. Oh, now that's a headline. That'll get you clicks. You see. The mainstream media was never about the truth. Now it's just a weapon that the mainstream uses to spread false narratives and fake news. Hong Kong. Hundreds of protesters in Hong Kong swarmed into the legislature's main building Monday night, tearing down portraits of legislative leaders and spray painting pro-democracy slogans on the walls of the main chamber. Frustration was mounting over a lack of response from the administration to opposition demands. Police carrying riot shields and firing tear gas are moved in shortly after midnight to clear the surrounding streets, but appear to have paused outside the legislative building. A spokesman had earlier broadcast a warning that appropriate force would be used in the clearance option, but there was no immediate word on any arrest or injuries. Necessary force. That means putting them in camps of concentration. Interesting how they paused outside the legislative building, almost like they wanted an attack and had planned for one. Very likely that they hired goons to do it for them. You see, this is what happens when you let go of free speech. This is what happens when you let the commies win. The left-wing nutjobs and their cultural Marxism. They're the ones trying to spread it. They're trying to spread it in America so that we can become just like them. Didn't even Andrew Yang talk about a social credit system in the United States? They're all shills for the Chinese. The sharp escalation in tactics came on the anniversary of the former British colony's return to China, a city holiday, and reflected mounting frustration with Hong Kong's leader for not responding to protesters' demands after several weeks of demonstration. The protesters whacked away at thick glass windows until they shattered and broke. Yada yada. So as you can see, even though we have proof here that it's very likely that Hong Kong and the Chinese government planned for this, It's just disheartening to see the media so ready to lie and jump on the fake news, but I guess that's what they are. Fake news. Police estimate 190,000 people joined the peaceful march, the third major one in as many weeks. Organizers estimated the number at over 500,000, and protesters can be seen here. Apparently, shields are not even. Hong Kong has been racked by weeks of protest over a government attempt to change extradition laws to allow suspects to be sent to China to face trial. And that's pretty much the story, friends. It's a scary day and age we live in. And I know that there is a distinction between Hong Kong and China, but when it comes to stuff like this, there is absolutely no distinction. Anyways, the real story here is that the news is fake and Reddit exposed them all. But that's merely the obvious. Well, that's all for now, folks. What do you think about Reddit's actual accomplishment? You think they've done good? Do you think it was the police themselves, or maybe they hired someone? Be sure to let me know. Now, I'm constantly being demonetized. Every single video I upload, it's the same thing. So if you want to support me, you can do so by joining me on Patreon or Subscribestar, or donating via PayPal. Although you can join for as low as $1. There are different tiers you can choose from, and may pick what you wish. Lastly, sharing the video always helps because websites are no longer promoting our content. As always, thanks for watching. This has been Mr. Obvious, and I'll see you all next time.